Is EFT legit or just another woo-woo trend? Today, I'm going to be sharing 4 different studies with you that might completely change how you think about tapping. One study talks about a 43% drop in stress hormones, also referred to as cortisol. Another one of the study found that EFT worked just as well as the gold standard therapy for anxiety. One study is on veterans, and they saw a 64% drop in PTSD symptoms. That is huge. And then the one that shocked me the most, brain scans that showed craving centers that were literally shutting down after practicing EFT. So let's just dive right in. So for anyone new here, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, also referred to as tapping, this practice of gently tapping on different points of the body while we are acknowledging how we are feeling. This is a stress reduction method where you're tapping on the acupressure points as you're focusing on this emotion or problem that you're dealing with. I know that this can sound very weird, a little strange, and that can be why, there's skeptics out there. And I will be completely honest, I was one of those skeptics at one time because, this is based on Chinese medicine, and Western science has always questioned that. So if you're out there watching this and you're skeptical, that's okay. We're going to dive into some of the science today. So over the past 10 to 15 years, researchers have done tons and tons of clinical trials using EFT, and some of the results are really hard to ignore. So let's go ahead and look at some of that science. So I picked several different studies that I want to talk about today, and I have some notes here. So if you see me looking over, that's why. So we're going to be covering studies that talk about stress hormones, anxiety in teens, which I think is a hot topic, especially as we're getting ready to go back to school and the stress of all of that and then transitions that so many of these teens are dealing with. Another one's about PTSD with veterans, and then also brain scans. We're going to start by discussing hormones because that is something that you cannot fake. So this study looked at whether EFT could control cortisol levels. And again, cortisol is that stress hormone in the body. And this is a hormone that your body releases when you are feeling anxious or when you are under pressure. And again, this is a part of us. This hormone is there to help us in situations where we need that. But when we're talking about chronic anxiety and stress and the cortisol levels pumping through your body continuously, that is not healthy. So the way that this study worked is that they took saliva samples before and after an EFT session. And the result showed that cortisol in the EFT group, because they had a group that did not do EFT, but cortisol levels in the EFT group dropped by 43%. That is huge. That is a huge number. And what I always like to remind people is that when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, if you just start tapping on one of the points and taking some nice deep breaths, that is going to begin to lower your cortisol levels. So for comparison, another group that was doing regular, psychoeducation dropped 20%. And then the group that had no treatment whatsoever only dropped 2%. So the fact that tapping was more than double the psychoeducation I found that pretty fascinating. So what's interesting though with this particular study was that people didn't necessarily report that they felt much better emotionally after this, even though their stress hormone tanked. So what that suggests is that tapping might calm your body first and then your mind catches up later. So we start to feel calmer and in our body, and when we feel more grounded and calm in the body, then the mind can calm down. Okay, moving on to study number 2. So next we're going to compare EFT to CBT for teens. And so CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. That is the gold standard for treating anxiety and stress. And that is oftentimes what therapists will use when working with their clients. So in this pilot study with teens, They did 3 sessions of EFT, 3 sessions of CBT, and the result was that EFT significantly reduced anxiety compared to the no treatment group. CBT also helped, but here's the kicker. When they compared EFT to CBT, there wasn't a significant difference. However, what is important to keep in mind here that EFT performed just as well as CBT. And again, this was just in a very small study. So why does this really matter? Because CBT is widely accepted and taught in every psychology program, and EFT is often dismissed. But in this sample group, it really held its own, and I think that's powerful. And I think that it also goes a lot in line with what I often tell my clients, is that tapping is a wonderful practice to use in addition to whatever else that you're doing. So if you are going to therapy, I think that's amazing. I think everybody should be in therapy. I think it's really helpful. And I think tapping can add to that. And I think that it offers different ways of working through your issues. But in this example of dealing with anxiety, it held its own with CBT. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. Okay, moving on to study number 3. This one was about veterans and PTSD. If you know me, if you've watched my videos, you know that I am passionate about military because I was a military wife for 20 years. My husband is now retired, but PTSD is a big deal, and it's not just with veterans that people experience PTSD. People in all walks of life experience PTSD, right? So, you can keep that in mind as I share this study. So, but this study is one that really, really blows me away. One group got regular care. The other group got regular care plus EFT, a total of 6 sessions that were delivered over 6 weeks. So 1 session a week. After practicing EFT, the PTSD scores dropped by 64%. From 39 to 25, and the results lasted for at least 6 weeks. So not only that, they also saw improvements in anxiety, insomnia, and even symptoms from the traumatic brain injury. So for context, a 64% drop with a huge effect size is practically unheard of in psychological research. So pretty big deal, pretty big deal. The next study, and the last one that I want to talk about today, is a study that was done on food cravings. And the way that they did this study was taking brain scans of people before and after. So let's talk about how EFT impacts your brain. We know from Harvard research on acupuncture that by stimulating certain points, you can calm the brain and in areas that are linked to fear and to pain. So researchers asked, does EFT do something similar? So they scanned 15 people who struggled with food cravings using what is called an fMRI. And first they showed pictures to these people of cookies, of burgers, of ice cream, all the yummy things that aren't necessarily healthy for you. And their brains would, in these pictures, the brains lit up in the craving reward areas of the brain. And then 10 of them for 4 weeks focused on using EFT and talked about their cravings and the emotions associated with them. The other 5 did nothing. After 4 weeks, they scanned them again, and the EFT group showed a huge decrease in brain activation. So their brains literally lit up differently, and in some cases, they didn't light up at all. So remember that when they did the scans the first time, the brains were lighting up in the areas where, those food cravings would light up. And when they did it the second time, putting those same foods in front of them, in some of them, they didn't light up at all. And this was a study that Dr. Peta Stapleton was involved in, and she is an amazing researcher, and she has pictures of this. I will include them here. Even the scientists who were doing this were shocked by the fact that there was no activation at all in some of these scans when they saw those food images. So that means that EFT didn't just change their feelings, it changed their brain response. That's huge. Changing your brain response. That is that's that whole rewiring that we talk about with tapping, how it can help you to think about things differently, and then you feel differently, you have a different response. So that's pretty amazing. So what does all of this mean? This means that EFT shows measurable changes in hormones dropping, in improving anxiety levels, in plummeting PTSD symptoms, and even in shifting brain scans. So critics can argue that maybe it's just a placebo effect or the exposure element, not the tapping itself that is doing this. And honestly, we don't fully know the mechanism yet. But if it's something that it's safe and it's easy to learn and it helps people to feel better, then isn't that worth paying attention to? Isn't that worth trying? So just to recap, tapping helps to reduce cortisol by up to 43%. And it showed the equivalent levels of response to CBT for anxiety. It helped reduce PTSD symptoms by 64%. And brain scans changed. The brain's lit up differently. So what do you think? Is EFT legit, or is it just a mind trick? What are your thoughts? I would love for you to comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to try EFT yourself, I've linked some free resources and some other videos that are available here on my YouTube page and descriptions of those. And I would love for you to give them a try. I would encourage you to follow along and subscribe to the channel. And if you are intrigued by this and you want to just dive in and go deeper, sign up for a free consultation with me and let's see what the next best step is for you, because I am here to support you 100%. I'm sending you all the good vibes, all the love as you continue to tap and feel good. Talk to you soon.